We are doing a podcast based on introducing Dallas to Wescom Inc. Hopeful that some folks out in Wyoming and North Dakota can get to know this fine fellow that we had the pleasure of running into and subsequently hiring and coming on as our business development and salesperson, sales lead for us in this Western region. So really excited to have you, Dallas, and have the privilege of making some introduction to our general customers and folks who listen into our podcast so that when they see Dallas on LinkedIn and in person and wherever else, they know who Dallas is. So maybe to that start, walk us through, tell us a little bit about who Dallas is and what his past looks like.
Yeah, I'm super excited about the position and what that's going to bring. I have a fair background in electrical. I should be having my journeyman here within the next month. So I do know electrical side of things as well. I do have sales background. I was a sales manager for Coca-Cola, and I understand, meeting clients' needs and meeting the expectation of, our brand as well and what that means to us. First off is going to be safety and making sure, you meet that client need is a big part of building connections. And you take away the superficial titles of people's positions at work or what they do for hobbies. I like to get to know people personally and get to know them. That's a big part of sales, is just getting to know your customers and what they need, what they want, what they like. I think that's a big part of who I am as a person. Just I'm a good people person. I enjoy people a lot.
Yeah, I think that was very evident when we first sat down the first time, Dallas, is, I've always watched people's demeanor more than anything in an interview, how they, and every position has its skills that are needed, but you mentioned getting to know customers, and it just spurred a thought that, why does that even matter? That you know who your customer is? Can't you just provide a good service? But the reality is, you have to know your customer to know what matters to them so that you can tailor your service to what they need. And I definitely gathered that in our conversations that you seem to have a knack of that, of connecting with the customer and getting to know them beyond just, what service do you need, but more the why behind it so that we can give you the right solution to whatever your problem is. So that's great.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've thought about this over the weekend. I knew we were going to be doing this podcast, and I think what has brought me to Wescom is just, my energy, the people you surround yourself with. If you surround yourself with genuine people, you're going to attract genuine people. And I think that is what has brought me to Wescom. I've seen a lot of great people working here right now, and it makes me feel good about the decision that I've made, and the connection that I have outside of here I think they will transpire to something bigger than myself. I'm excited about the opportunity here.
Yeah. When you mentioned kind of meeting clients' needs and expectations, and you said a little bit about when you get away from the title, sometimes salespeople can have a negative connotation to the word. I don't think there's anyone who really loves to be sold on something. There's a lot of people who appreciate having their needs met. But tell me a little bit about, what attracted you to sales to begin with? I mean, you're an electrician. You said you could have your journeyman within a month. Came from a coal mine, spent some time there, right? Along with some other sales positions prior to that and some other technical positions. But what really is your driving force for sales? What's your favorite part of that position?
I think for me, sales is more about the client's needs. It's about that feeling that they get, that they're making the right decision. I don't think sales is about feeling sold. You never want a customer to feel sold, because then you're trying to persuade them into what you think is right. And I want them to feel like what they're thinking is right. And if they go with us, and they made the right decision, then I feel confident that that's what sales is about and what that is for me.
Yeah, I think I hear right there, Dallas, about serving, right? Like, we talk at Wescom about servant style leadership, and I try to make sure everyone understands this, even in their own individual positions, that uh, everyone is leading something, whether you're leading a sales call, a solution, invoice, electrical service call, field project, whatever it is. Every single person is being a leader in their role. And servant style leadership is right along this idea that we're not here to serve ourselves. We're here to serve the end user, right? And if I
Absolutely.
go in with my preconceived notion of what I think that client needs, I could lead them down the wrong path. I need to get in there, understand what they need, and collaboratively with their input, come up with a solution that makes sense for whatever their need is. So far, I've yet to walk into a facility and or to an oil producer or to anyone and find out that the same exact solution works. Similarities that work across the board, right?
Right.
They all appreciate being treated well. They all love having integrity as a contractor. But the word integrity means a lot in the industrial space. Like, you're not going to work if you don't have
Absolutely.
integrity. But ultimately, you got to be flexible, you got to be accountable, and you got to be urgent. Those three things I have found in every single industrial customer I've worked with. How that looks is different amongst all of them. Urgency in the railroad, for example, looks a lot like responding to their needs and their emails and their meeting requests and stuff like that. But they are not interested in urgently changing the railroad system. That's not what they're
Right.
after.
Yeah.
They're urgent in continuing conversation and dialogue, but there's an understanding that that is a system that has been in place for hundreds of years, and you're not going to change that overnight. And frankly, it's almost impossible with the constraints that there are there. But that doesn't mean we can't give great solutions. And that looks a
Right.
lot different than if you're at a shutdown with a pipeline company. That urgency means that, hey, we only have power down for 10 days. There's communities relying on this natural gas. This pipeline, come heck or high water, it has to be flowing next Tuesday. That urgency looks a lot different, right? So,
Yeah.
but it's always there. And I think that's a really important part of servant style leadership, is understanding that the end result looks a little different for everybody, but the process is, there's some underlying similarities that go with it. When you think about, you know, where were you last before you came to Wescom? Maybe let our audience know kind of the last couple of jobs you were at.
My previous job, I was at Entech. I was working at Cordero as an electrician. We were working on drag lines, shovels, belts, haul trucks. We did a lot of troubleshooting with all of the electrical out there.
Okay,
And
hang on that subject a little bit, because there's a lot of our audience who doesn't even know what a drag line is or a shovel is. And so whenever we get people on the podcast that have dirty boots and dirty belt buckles, I really enjoy getting a little bit into their dirt, because I will forever be reminded, Dallas, in Duluth, Minnesota, out at the port, we used to take Wyoming coal and North Dakota coal, and we would export it out of here, like
mhm,
by the tons, 30 tons or 30 million, whatever the metric, 30 million tons a
yeah,
year used to come out of the Duluth Harbor, right? Now there's five, and they're closing that coal dock next year. The individual I met at that coal dock 4 or 5 years ago, his name was Paul. Hey, Paul, nice to meet you. How long you worked here? 30 plus years in the
oh
coal
yeah,
industry. The entire 30 years that industry was declining and gonna die. That man retired, has a nice life, nice wife, the whole Marianne, and guess what? He does not have lung disease, he does not have emphysema, he has nothing except for a great life. And that is not what is portrayed in the real world. In the real world, what is
right,
portrayed, or in the media world, what's portrayed is coal is dirty, nasty, ugly, it wrecks communities, it wrecks people. So they don't even know what a drag line is. They don't know what a shovel is, because they just know that coal is dirty and bad and ugly and get me out. So
right, yeah.
what is actually going on there when you're using those words? What's the process?
So uh, the shovels down at the coal mine, they are, you got your dirt shovels that unload, offload every bit of dirt to another area, and then you got your coal shovels that take everything back to the plant and you fill up your silos, and they have to have a certain amount of ash that they have to keep below a certain amount of level. They've got the drag lines; those are carrying tons. You can fit two vehicles side by side in between the or into the bucket of a drag line. It's a massive bucket. Um, the the word about the coal mining industry, I would say it is it a dirty job? Yeah, it's certainly a dirty job. But what we want to come out on top of is clean energy, And I think there's a fine line. There's a gray area that people don't see. Everything that we do is within federal. Everything that we were doing is trying to make the cleanest energy that you possibly can with coal. And I think the engineers, the back end of the coal industry, they really do their absolute best to make sure it's a clean energy.
I've been amazed at how well they do.
And it's come a long ways. They've come up with a lot of sample testing. They have to make sure that everything is. We have a whole lab down there that would do all their sample testing to make sure everything is within their quota. Yeah, it's a big industry that I I think that should not be dying. I think we've got plenty of years ahead of us with the coal industry, and there's a good reason to keep attacking towards it.
When you talk about shovels, we're talking massive excavators, if you will, right? We're talking about drag lines, and we're really expanding that word, and we're stripping the coal. If folks have an opportunity to ever fly into Wyoming, it's a pretty big treat to see the landscape underneath you and look at those coal mines and how they reclaim the soils and how they put everything back together. But you fly over an active coal mine, and they're pulling that soil back, and they're benching it down and getting to that coal and dragging it out of there. It's quite an operation. We do.
It is.
I've been in plenty of iron ore mines along with some of these coal mines, and one thing that just was so impressive the first time I walked into a coal mine was how much cleaner the buildings are than iron ore mines and all the equipment. Like there's a great
really?
sense of care for taking care of the facilities at a coal mine, and that is remarkably different than the northern Minnesota iron ore mines. Now, granted, one thing about coal is it's easier to clean up than iron ore is. Iron ore, you get it on your pants and it's there for life. You get it on your boots or your truck or whatever, it's there for life. Coal is, as long as you take it off fairly quickly, you can keep it clean. So the shower room in a coal facility is much different than a shower room in an iron ore facility. So it's kind of interesting. But yeah, I think there's such good salt of the earth people in that coal mine. Did you work shift work when you were there at the coal mine?
I did. Yeah, I would work 4 days on, 3 days off, 3 days on, 1 day off, and then 3 nights on. And then I would have 3 days off and then 4 days on. And then I would have 7 days off.
And how long did it take you to get accustomed to even knowing what that schedule was?
It took me probably a couple of months to get familiar with the schedule, but you never get used to it. You never do. 4 a.m. rolls around and you feel like a zombie. That's why it's very important to, especially in our world doing electrical, that you are extremely safe and cautious of what you're doing, especially when you feel delusional at 4 a.m. So yeah, it is a different world. I did this for a year and a half, and don't get me wrong, it was a great job, but it's hard on the body for sure.
It is, and I think this is a really important thing. We were just having a discussion this morning actually about a little safety situation that had popped up last week, and I was reminded this weekend in visiting with some folks down at a trade show that we were at. There was a gentleman from the mine who stopped by the booth, and he was talking about safety. He's our safety director, and we got into a lively discussion about policies and procedures and why people behave the way they do out in the field. And Wescom, we've always had this behavioral based approach to safety rather than a punitive approach to safety. Like rather than getting people in trouble, let's talk about the behavior that leads to it. And it's real easy when you're sitting in an office or in a meeting to come up with all kinds of reasons, right?
Yeah.
But you've got to remember exactly what you just said there, which is, what about at 4 a.m. when you're exhausted, or when you're not all in? What about 10 o'clock at a shutdown? What about 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Thursday when you've already worked 55 hours and you're just shot? What about even if you've only worked 40 hours, and I use only loosely, if you're on your 39th hour, but it's the 39th stressful hour of a high voltage piece of equipment you're working on, or a high intensity project, or maybe your family at home is suffering, maybe something terrible in your life is going on with cancer, or whatever the deal is. All these things impact our reaction out in the field and our approach to safety, and we have to be cognizant of that. Otherwise, we end up forgetting what it's like to have your boots on. And I really try a lot at Wescom to remind folks that, we make our money off our fingers and toes. That's where we make our money. We don't make money anywhere else unless our fingers and toes are moving. Whether it's automating some equipment, whether it's walking around pulling some wire, whatever it is, we move fingers and toes. That's our widget. But if we come up so restrictive or so expectant that there's never going to be a problem, or there's never ever going to be a situation out in the field, the best solution to those kind of days when we're wound up is to grab your steel-toed boots behind you, lace those puppies up, put on some FR gear, and go train the field out in the field. And the minute you do, you will realize why they made the decisions they did. It was not ill intent. It was not because they're stupid. It was not because they didn't want to follow a process. None of it. It was because they were out in the midst of a harsh environment, which is the reality of what we work in, and they were all doing at their best. And I think that's what's really cool, that you came from this background. You understand that. So when you're out working with these folks and coming up with solutions and trying to let them know that there's a player in town named Wescom that can help them with their electrical needs and their automation needs, you inherently remember what that's like. So if you go to a meeting at the coal mine and the supervisor's unable to attend because something popped out in the pit, you're going to know what that's like, right? You're not going to be upset by that. That's just a normal day in the coal mine, and off you roll. If you didn't have that experience, how in the world do you ever market that?
Yeah, absolutely. For instance, at the coal mine, they have a lot of, maybe they have a lot of work going on down at the plant. Possibly a shutdown is happening. Well, you got to get that coal running back up to the silo. So if you have a belt down, you have a limited time to work on something, and if you don't get it done in that time frame, it's on to the next time when that belt's going to be shut down. So you got to understand those types of situations as well, and I, being from that background, I understand, and I'm glad I do have the background in electrical, so I know what I'm talking about or what someone else is talking about. It's not some fugazi for me, that I have nothing processing up there. So I'm happy to be in the electrical field as well.
Awesome. And prior to the job at the coal mine, where were you working?
So before there, I was working in sales at Coca-Cola, and that really helped me develop my sales background and understand things from a different point of view. Because I think there's sales management, and then there's also sales representative, and understanding both sides of those worlds now has helped me develop into the sales developer that I am now. The back end, you get a lot more training to be able to help train other people. And now it's more about brand awareness for me. I think that brand awareness is a big part of sales. If I am on time, I'm there when the team needs me or a client needs me. Those are the big things, I think, as part of sales. Obviously, pricing or whatever comes to mind for the client. You just have to find those things. But as far as Coca-Cola goes, there's a lot of things that you learn from one of the biggest brands in the world. So I think I've learned a lot from Coca-Cola.
Awesome. And I think once it's one thing to have that knowledge of a big brand behind you. It's another thing to also have the reality of having your boots on the ground and now marrying those two. And that's what I think is
Yeah.
really exciting. So we've talked a bit about, Dallas, you came from the mining, you have some background in the sales, you're putting those two things together. You're going to help us market Wescom to folks who may need us. One thing about our world that we play in as we energize America with Western North Dakota, all of North Dakota, frankly, and all of Wyoming, and even into Montana, and these other areas that you'll be helping us market and get out and establish some relationships, you will find we have fierce competition that's really quite good. And our space is well served. There's a lot of good folks out there doing incredible things. So we are going to be knocking on some doors. We're going to be harassing some people that are like, hey, I'm well taken care of. And that is totally golden, right? And good
Yeah.
handshakes and good for those folks who are getting well taken care of. We have noticed that as our business continues to be in business, we are finding that there's a lot of folks who don't know about us. And then once they do know about us, they do need a partner. And for those folks, we're really excited to go partner up with them and hopefully go do great things together. A little bit more about you. Married, live in Gillette, got a couple kids, got a couple dogs. Tell me a little bit about your personal life. What do you like to do?
I really like enjoying my time with my family. My time with my family, it helps me slow things down a little bit. When life gets going fast, although the kids are growing like weeds, I do like to enjoy my time with my family. They mean a lot to me. And then, it goes my family, myself, and then golfing. Those are my three things that I really
Okay.
enjoy.
So when you're with the family, what does that look like? You got the kids are quite young, correct?
Yeah, my boy, he is 6, and my girl, she's 2, and both of them together, my 6-year-old, he is in basketball and soccer right now. We like this previous weekend, we got to go to one of his games. He had scored 2 goals, which was really awesome
Nice.
to see. He's a super competitive, just like his dad. So, uh,
Awesome.
and then my 2-year-old, she weighs just as much as he does, but she's ready to be a linebacker. She
Oh yeah,
she's
only because
she's
you have to
great.
carry her probably. You feel like she
Yeah,
weighs a lot. Yeah,
yeah.
that's awesome.
She weighs about 45 pounds right now. At 2 years old, it's great to see both of them growing, but she needs to slow down a little bit.
Isn't it awesome? I mean, I think dadhood is one of the coolest things, and as you see these little babies develop into human beings, it's quite a remarkable experience for somebody to go through. And boy, you sure learn a lot about yourself when you're a parent.
You do.
You learn a lot about your children, but you learn mostly about yourself and where you fit into the grand old equation. It's a quite an interesting deal. And so in Gillette, born and raised in Gillette.
Born and raised in Gillette. I was born in Texas, hence why my name is Dallas. My dad was a big Dallas Cowboys fan.
Okay.
I know there's maybe a lot of 49ers fans out there that are booing me right now, but you know, uh, that's where I got my name, was the Dallas Cowboys, and then my parents moved up to Gillette, Wyoming. Been here majority of my life. Went to college. Planned to be a pilot. That was my number one goal when I was going to college. I was going to be a professional flight officer, and that got expensive. So I was looking at probably $150,000 to be able to get my license and graduate. And I was like, well, I'm going to need a job to be able to support this. And then flipped into electrical. My dad's been an electrician for 30 plus years. Majority of my family is electricians. So I've spent a good background, growing up, seeing my dad and my uncles doing electrical work. And so I was like, well, let me try to get into electrical work as well. So I started it, really enjoyed it. I just took off from there. I was doing residential for about 2 years, and then we found ourselves wanting to have a kid, we moved back home, and we ended up continuing electrical here. I worked for an outfit here in town doing industrial and commercial, and here we are now.
Awesome. Yeah, that's cool. I think it's always good for us to remember to, yeah, where we came from professionally and then also personally. Wescom is known as a kid family, as a kid company. We got lots of little Wescomers running around, and
Oh
I think
yeah,
it may be one of the reasons for our continued whatever it is, the culture that we have or whatever, is that we're all reminded that life is a lot bigger than each one of us individually. And folks who have family and understand that connection, that is one thing that is inherent with them, is they just understand that life is bigger than me. And boy, it's really fun to work with a team of folks who get up every day wanting to do the right thing for the end user and knowing that in the long run, it benefits me, but it also benefits everyone around me. And I
yeah,
think there's, as the world goes here, it's going to be less and less real small companies. There's going to be tons of solo companies, a lot of entrepreneurs who stay
yeah,
solopreneurs almost.
yeah,
But there's not going to be so many 50-ish style employers, because it's a really tough number. It's almost like you got to be a little bit larger in order to pay for all the safety requirements and everything that goes with it, or else be so small that nobody cares that you don't have those programs established, right?
yeah,
It's getting harder and harder to be right there in the middle. So I think as we continue to attract and grow and move along, we're gonna find more people like Dallas here who are uh, caring about their family. They're in it for their family and for taking care of the end user. And they usually have things in that order that, hey, I know I'm here to work, but I have a family that I'm at home to support. And then there's usually these other things that I enjoy. And for many, it starts with their faith, and then it's their family, and then it's their work. Maybe some it's their family, then it's their faith, and then it's their work. But whatever order that works for each individual person, we know one thing: life is a lot bigger than us individually. So really excited
absolutely.
to see you get out there and introduce you to some of our existing clients so you can help us uh, be a conduit of some of that information. One thing we've learned at Wescom as we go, you can do sales almost from anywhere, but much like we say that the boots on the ground, get the closest to the action to get the best result. The same thing is in sales, right? So having Dallas come
Absolutely.
through your facility, stop by, see what's going on, check in with the guys, this will help us make sure that we're out doing exactly what we set out to do, which is, empower people, build customers for life, create opportunities, and really ultimately serve with integrity by being flexible, urgent, and accountable. And really excited to see you go out and do that with us. Not for us, but with us.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, Dallas, is there anything else we got to let the customers or our potential folks know about you?
You know, I don't know. I guess we'll
Just
have
get
to
ready.
just chat in person before we get into that. I guess we'll have to just talk to our clients, one on one. I'm definitely a person that will, call, let you know I'm on my way or I'm going to be in the area. I'd like to chat with you and, you know, get to know these people personally. I
Yeah.
think
What's the
that's the
one thing
best
that you
way.
hope? What's the biggest downfall of your job? When you think about sales, what's the worst thing?
I would say not being able to be in front of everyone all the time. Obviously, I do my best to account for what I can, try to be there as much as I can. That's one downside is I'm not there all the time, but I will always have my phone on me if you need something.
Cool. Yeah, I like that. It is. That's a hard thing to do. Is a person has a strong desire to be everywhere, everything, everyone, all the time, and the reality is that we can't all do that. And I think our customers also understand that because they're in the same exact situation, right? Yeah,
Absolutely.
they probably
Yeah,
wish that for themselves too within their organization. So, well, cool. Welcome to Dallas. We look forward to getting you out there, and I know our listeners are going to enjoy future podcasts with you and hearing what you're up to.
absolutely. I'm excited for it.
Cool.